I'm Pat Doris. Welcome to The Story. Tonight we have a big show that includes reports on Oregon's climate plans, a new opioid program from the fire department, and details on a proposal to change Measure 110. But first, we're going to talk about life and death and a gun killing that is chilling no matter how you look at it. It's our big story tonight. Gun violence is an epidemic in Portland. Last year, 74 people died in homicides, and the vast majority of them were shootings. Often we report just the basics: who was shot, where, and what happened afterwards. Seldom do we get a detailed account of how the shooting unfolded or why. But that changes tonight. Investigative reporter Kyle Iboshi brings us new video that details one of the most notable shootings of last year. It happened in broad daylight in busy downtown Portland. Now, the images you're about to see are graphic, but we felt it was important for the community to see to better understand the brazenness of gun violence through one brief interaction between complete strangers.
(911) What's the address of your emergency?
It was right by Jake's. I had somebody road rage me and come out of their car and start hitting my window. I shot him, and then somebody else was pointing something at me. I shot at them too.
Okay, so you're the shooter. You're the one who shot him?
Yes.
On Wednesday afternoon, October 11th, a man calls 911, reporting he'd shot two people in broad daylight in busy downtown Portland. The man, Jeffrey Hammond, claims the shooting was self-defense. The 47-year-old is charged with murder in the second degree. So, what happened? Using never-before-seen security camera footage, cell phone video, 911 calls, court records, and police interviews, KGW reconstructed the deadly shooting. It's 4:27 when the black Mercedes SUV Jeffrey Hammond is driving pulls up to the Moxie Hotel in downtown Portland. He puts on his hazard lights. Hammond is working as an Uber driver, waiting for a ride request. A security camera facing northwest shows Hammond pull into a parking space along Southwest Alder Street and 10th Avenue. His vehicle sticks out a bit, slightly impeding traffic. Several cars pass by, including a gray Toyota Tundra driven by Ryan Martin. At 4:29, another security camera, located outside the Moxie Hotel, facing south, captures an image of Martin's gray Toyota truck. He stops at the other side of the intersection. Martin gets out and walks back across the street without closing his door. There is no audio. In court records, witnesses describe shouting. The two strangers interact for 13 seconds. Then, the sound of gunfire sends people on the street ducking for cover. Through the hotel's dark windows, you can see Hammond holding his gun outside the driver's side window after shooting Martin. This is cell phone video from a hotel guest, looking down from the floors above. Hammond admits he tries to shoot the victim again, but the gun jams. Hammond says, Martin pleads, "I'm sorry, I had a bad day." We've blurred the victim's body. Ryan Martin of Southwest Washington is a husband and a father, a youth sports coach, and a master electrician. He dies at the scene. The 47-year-old is unarmed. For nearly 2 minutes, the video shows people in busy downtown Portland walking past the scene, either unaware or unmoved. At 4:32, a man visiting Portland for a convention walks down the sidewalk. He notices something around the corner and pulls out his cell phone. Hammond responds, pointing his gun and firing. The man, Sam Gomez, falls to the sidewalk in pain. The bullet goes through one leg and breaks the femur in the other. He survives. As Hammond slowly drives away, he fires again, missing Gomez. Hammond drives through downtown Portland when he makes that call to 911.
So you shot somebody. Where's the person that you shot?
They're on the opposite side of the street from Jake's. I can't remember. Honestly, I don't know the street.
Okay, hang on a second here.
No, there were two people. There was another person that was, like, pointing something at me, so.
Okay. So you said you do not know where the victim that you shot is currently?
They were in the street, right by Jake's Grill.
Okay. Do you have eyes on them right now?
No, I drove away. I wasn't going to remain on the scene and get mobbed and, like, have to shoot more people. They're both alive, so I am pulling into the parking lot by the Multnomah County Justice Center. I thought you guys were going to want to take me in or interview me and whatever.
Hammond turns himself into the police on the top floor of a parking garage adjacent to the Justice Center. Later, he speaks with detectives.
Your day today, like, was it a normal day for you?
Yeah, normal Uber day.
So you're doing Uber?
Yeah, so yeah, I've been doing Uber lately.
Okay.
Just because I'm out of money, it's time to work. You know, there's no way around it, basically.
Just months earlier, Hammond had filed for bankruptcy. He was out of a job after his financial company closed. Uber policy prohibits drivers and riders from carrying firearms while using the app.
When you rolled down your window, was there any warning given to him, like, you better get away from me or stop menacing me? Did you?
I said I have a gun.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what was his reaction to that?
He just stood there.
Okay.
So.
And when you decided to fire the shot, what sort of feelings were you having at that point? Like, tell me about what's going through your head so I can get a better understanding.
I didn't even really think about it. It was just that, like, he was right there. He wasn't leaving me alone. I was intimidated, and that was kind of it. Like, it happened pretty quick.
In court papers, Hammond's defense lawyers say they intend to rely on a defense of self-defense. Prosecutors argue not a single witness described seeing or hearing anything that would have justified the shooting. Jeffrey Hammond is scheduled to go to trial in August, where a jury will determine if this was self-defense or murder.
Kyle joins me now. I got to say, that guy's reaction, amazing. It's sort of like he had just gone to the store and got a gallon of milk.
Yeah, it was remarkable. The other thing that stuck out to me in watching this video in real time over and over again is that 2-minute period after Mr. Martin is shot and he's lying on the ground and people are passing by, many of them may be unaware, but you just don't see the response that you'd expect, I think.
Yeah. Well, and I wonder if there's just so much weird stuff that happens in Portland now that people know to just kind of stay in their tunnel vision. Wow. Okay. How did you get this video?
It's unusual, especially for a pending case. I mean, this case has not gone to trial just yet. There was a bail hearing back in November that basically nobody really noticed at the time. So I filed a public records request for all the exhibits from that hearing, and from that we got all these videos, the 911 recordings, and the police interviews.
So it's like a little mini trial as
Exactly.
the shooter's arguing to be released, so they have to show the evidence.
And prosecutors lay that out before a judge.
Wow, okay. Remind us of the ORS.
So in Oregon, when it comes to use of deadly force, in the case of self-defense, the law is pretty clear. There are certain circumstances: one, committing or attempting to commit a felony involving the use or threaten imminent use of physical force against a person, or committing or attempting to commit a burglary in a dwelling, or, finally, using or about to use unlawful deadly physical force against a person.
Interesting, okay. And I know finally that you tried to reach out to the families.
I did. I felt it really important in this case. Yeah. We don't want to blindside them. Obviously, they've suffered enough. But I wanted to make them aware we were doing this story and all the elements of the story. I can tell you a couple things. One is Mr. Martin's family is quite distraught still.
Sure.
They felt it really important to recognize the fact he wasn't just a victim. He was a husband, he was a father, a musician, loved by many people. I emailed with Mr. Gomez, who lives in Arizona. He is still recovering physically after being shot, still going through physical therapy. And then I reached out to Mr. Hammond's public defenders, and they did not respond to my emails.
It's all shocking, but really shocking when you see Mr. Gomez shot and laying there on the ground.
Definitely.
Wow. Okay, thanks, Kyle. Great stuff as always. Now let's get to some big news today about Oregon's Measure 110 and what Democrats hope to change in the upcoming legislative session. Lawmakers on both sides of the aisle admit 110 is flawed, but they have different opinions on how to fix it. It should come as no surprise that the Democrats' plan does not go nearly as far as Republicans want, especially when it comes to recriminalizing drug use and the strings attached to that reintroduction of that crime. Blair Best has our story.
Tuesday at the state capitol, lawmakers met for the 5th time to talk about Oregon's addiction and public safety crisis ahead of the February session. The attendance alone showed just how pressing these issues are.
I'm going to remind everybody it's an ongoing process.
The Joint Committee on Addiction and Community Safety Response formed in September. The bipartisan group, co-chaired by Senator Kate Lieber, is now revealing a controversial proposal that would end parts of Measure 110 and recriminalize possession of illegal drugs like fentanyl.
With fentanyl, it is killing people, and we need to make sure that we continue to prevent that.
They're also looking to expand treatment options, break down barriers drug users face when seeking residential care, and increase the amount of time a sobering or treatment facility can hold someone who's intoxicated.
And I believe this helps take immediate action to some of the problems we're seeing now, and is a better path than what we were doing previously.
As for public safety, the proposal changes Oregon law to make it easier to prosecute drug dealers. It ups the penalties for drug dealing within a public park, near homeless shelters and treatment centers, and increases funding for treatment and staff recruiting. Some groups, like the ACLU of Oregon, see this as a step in the wrong direction.
This reflects a massive failure of leadership.
A failure? Interesting. Okay.
And they are not working on real solutions. They are working on failed policies of the war on drugs, which we know don't solve addiction or homelessness.
Look, I don't think that we should criminalize addiction. Like, I'm not, this is not my, if I'm going to lead with the values here, but we've got to have all the tools in our tool belt to address what's happening on the streets in Oregon, right? And we did remove a tool, and we are simply giving that tool back to the police.
Addiction is a healthcare issue. It is not a criminal issue.
Now, Republicans who sit on this committee also pushed back today on many of the proposed policies and argued that the timeline doesn't reflect enough urgency. Now, last week, House Republicans proposed a similar bill, but their main focus is ending Measure 110 and offering treatment instead of jail time. I also want to point out here that many of these proposed policies talk of refining the inner workings at treatment centers and sobering centers. But let's step back here. Oregon doesn't even have enough of these centers as it is, and building more, we're told, will take time. But on a more immediate note, the governor is expected to declare a fentanyl emergency in Portland any day now. In Salem, Blair Best, KGW News.
Thank you, Blair. Let's take a minute now to drill down on that recriminalization idea. Again, this is just the initial proposal. It will be introduced in the legislature, but it's far from set in stone. The proposal released today would create a Class C misdemeanor for possession of drugs like fentanyl. But before someone is booked on that charge, police would have to offer that person a deflection program. So what is that exactly? Well, it's described as a behavioral health intervention focused on helping individuals into drug treatment, supporting their addiction recovery, and connecting them with peer support. If they accept that and go through the program, that Class C misdemeanor goes away. And if they decline, then the person can be booked and prosecuted on that charge. A Class C misdemeanor, by the way, is the lowest of the misdemeanors, but carries a potential of up to 30 days in jail and a potential fine of over $1,200. It's the same class of crime as a petty theft. Democrats also say that if possession is recriminalized, officers would have the legal authority to confiscate illegal drugs, authority that is unclear right now with Measure 110. That means that officers could curb open-air drug use by simply taking the drugs away, they say, and potentially use the misdemeanor tool as the next step toward prevention. Republicans have blasted this proposal, as Blair said, saying it's not going nearly far enough, saying that the Class C crime is much too weak. The president of the District Attorneys Association of Oregon says the proposal is a good starting point, but is not there yet. And then there's this from the president of the Oregon State Sheriff's Association, Crook County Sheriff John Gottney, writing, "We find the low-level C misdemeanor penalty and the requirement for officers to offer a deflection program instead of arrest to be a complex and resource-intensive approach that we are unable to support." I also traded messages with Max Williams, the former head of Oregon's prison system and a 3-term lawmaker. We talked just about a half hour ago. He's spearheading the threat to start an initiative petition to ask voters to throw out Measure 110 this fall if the legislature does not go far enough with their reforms. Williams wrote, Anything short of reclassifying deadly drugs as a Class A misdemeanor crime will be inadequate to effectively steer more people into more treatment more quickly. The response from law enforcement says it all. It's unworkable, it won't motivate people to seek treatment, and it's overly complicated. We know Class A works because it worked before with drug courts. So, there you go on that one. What do you think about the proposal that lawmakers are considering next month? Do you think it goes too far? Maybe not far enough? Let us know, will you? Shoot us an email. The address is thestory@kgw.com, or call and leave a voicemail, 503-226-5090. Speaking of the drug crisis, starting next month, a new program in downtown Portland will offer people medication to treat addiction right on the streets immediately after they overdose. Then they'll be taken to a treatment center to begin treatment right away. That's the idea, anyway. It's called the Mobile Medication for Opioid Use Disorder, or MOOD program. I mean, I sort of wonder how long they worked on that acronym. It will run out of the Portland Fire and Rescue. They've seen the drug problem in downtown Portland firsthand, and so have we. This is footage from when we went on a ride-along with them as they responded to overdoses. Under the new program, a nurse team with the fire department will administer Narcan if it has not already been given.
What that does is it puts someone in withdrawal, which is a very difficult and painful thing to go through. And so if we can have medication there immediately available to help those withdrawal symptoms, we have a greater ability to get them to recovery and a lasting life. What we want to do is, if they consent, give the buprenorphine right there on scene, and then help them get to Central City Concern, which is going to be our partner for this pilot program, for recovery services. In addition to those recovery services, like Chief Sullivan said, our follow-up teams are also going to be having frequent contact with people. That way we can help them get to doctor's appointments, we can give them peer support, and we can really be supportive in their recovery effort.
The idea is that it saves time getting people into treatment after an overdose rather than walking away after they've been stabilized if they refuse to go to the hospital, or just leaving people at the hospital to try and find treatment later on their own.
In 2022 in Multnomah County, over 300 of our community members died of an opioid overdose. So Narcan, or naloxone, is our best antidote to reverse an overdose, but tragically around 5% of people who survive an overdose reversal will die of another overdose within a year, many of those within 48 hours of the reversal. So this is why it is so critical to connect people with care as soon as possible after an overdose event.
Wow, that's a stunning stat, isn't it? 5% within 48 hours. The program is a collaboration between Portland Fire, Multnomah County's Health Department, Care Oregon, and the Oregon Poison Center. It's funded by Care Oregon to run through June of 2025. Right now, it's focused on downtown Portland, but other counties and neighborhoods are watching it closely to see how it goes. Coming up next on The Story, Oregon's climate protection plan was paused last month after a judge ruled that the DEQ did not follow certain rules when putting the law together. And now, instead of appealing that ruling, the state will basically try for a big redo, delaying the program for at least a year. Many will argue that when it comes to emissions, there's no time to waste, but DEQ says this course is actually the shortest route to implementing the plan. Environmental reporter Kyle Williams explains when The Story returns. Oregon's signature climate program will be on hold for at least a year. That's after a court ruled last month that the Department of Environmental Quality failed to follow some administrative rules while making the law. And the DEQ has decided it will not appeal. Instead, they'll essentially have to start the administrative process all over again. Environmental reporter Kyle Williams explains.
Oregon's climate protection program was put in place in 2022, and at the time, it was seen as one of the strongest laws in the nation aimed at lowering greenhouse gas emissions. But it will likely be at least a year before it goes back into effect.
We still disagree with the ultimate decision, but we're accepting it and moving forward.
That's Lauren Wertis, a spokeswoman for the Department of Environmental Quality. The program, which would cut Oregon's greenhouse gas emissions by 90% by 2050, was invalidated by an appeals court in December. That was after a number of oil and gas utilities and business groups sued to block the plan. The court ruled that the state failed to meet some disclosure requirements in the rulemaking process. Now, the department could have appealed the ruling, but Wertis said that might have delayed the process even further.
The process of appealing is really uncertain and really long. It could set us into 2025 before we even hear back from the Supreme Court.
The new rulemaking process will take an estimated 12 months, and
yes, while we're doing the rulemaking, the climate protection program is not in effect.
That could leave businesses wondering what the eventual outcome will be, something Wertis said the state was hoping to avoid.
We do understand that this creates a lot of uncertainty for businesses, and really the point of cap and trade programs is to have this slow and certain process by which we decline greenhouse gas emissions.
Now, experts have been clear for many years that reducing our emissions will be crucial if we want to avoid the worst consequences of climate change. And having to redo the whole bureaucratic process will likely make that more difficult. But given the circumstances, Wertis said it was the best path forward.
Our priority is to protect climate in Oregon, and this was the shortest path to do so.
Kyle Williams, KGW News.
Now, if you want to make your voice heard on this issue, the Environmental Quality Commission, which approves the rules and policies of the DEQ, is meeting tomorrow, and they are taking public comment. You have to register, but we have a link at kgw.com. Coming up next on the story, we talk a lot about the new I-5 bridge across the Columbia, but the Hood River Bridge out east just scored a big win this week when it comes to federal dollars pouring in. How much they got and what the construction timeline looks like when the story returns. The new Hood River Bridge project got a big boost from the feds this week, a $200 million grant. The current bridge connects I-84 on the Oregon side to State Route 14 on the Washington side. It's the only crossing for more than 20 miles in either direction. It turned 100 years old this year. As you can see, kind of a tight fit for two very narrow traffic lanes and no shoulders and no options for pedestrians or bicycles. The new bridge will have all that. Wider lanes, shoulders, separate bike and pedestrian paths on one side. If the bridge is not replaced, the feds say the current bridge would have to be closed to cars or closed to trucks in 2030 and closed entirely by 2040. Here's a look at the finances. The total cost is in the neighborhood of $520 million. You have the $200 million from this week, along with the $120 million that's already been raised. $20 million of that comes from the higher tolls on the bridge that took effect last fall, by the way. So the project still needs about $200 million more to be fully funded. Funding news this week gives us a clearer view of the timeline for the new bridge. Construction could start late next year or early 2026, with a completed bridge ready for traffic by 2029. And that's the end of our show. Thanks so much for watching, and remember, the story, our collective story, well, that never ends. The good stuff is coming your way next, and I'll see you right back here tomorrow night, 6:30.